Hi. Are you bringing in a toy? Can you see it? Well, I guess it is an appropriate toy. Can I borrow that for a second? I'll give it back, I promise. It's a Girl Scout beret squeak toy that no longer squeaks. She's like, that's not giving it back, Mommy. That's throwing it over the bed. Bad Mommy. You fix. Okay, fine. I'll fix it. I will fix it. I will fix it. There. I fixed it. I love you. So, only yesterday. So, this is one of the Studio Ghibli movies. This one does not have Hayao Miyazaki directing it. I do believe he was one of the producers of it, or one of the executive producers of it, because that's generally how it tends to work at Studio Ghibli, is that if you're not one of the directors on the project, and then one of the other two, if you're the director, then one of the other ones is kind of like your producer, and then vice versa and stuff. But this one was directed by Isao Takahata, and only yesterday came out in 1991, and it is based around a manga of the same name that was originally serialized in 1987. It didn't run for very long. It ran from like March to September, but it wasn't telling like a very long story. And it was, originally written by Hotaru Okamoto and Yuko Tone. I apologize if I mispronounced those. And it was, of course, animated by Studio Ghibli for a different company, for Tokuma Shoten, for one of the networks in Japan. And as I said, so it came out in 1991, and then for the 25th anniversary in 2016, 25th anniversary, we got the English dub that was dubbed by GKIDS, which did a very good job with it, where we have Daisy Ridley as, as the main character, voicing, I always have a hard time with pronouncing her name right off the bat. It's Taiko. Is the main character, and then we have Dev Patel and several other people in it as several of the other reoccurring characters or main characters throughout it, with Dev Patel playing the love interest. And so we finally got it for like the 25th anniversary, but it and I can kind of figure out why this was not one of the ones that was part of the Disney grab, because this would have been out when Disney. Now you get to hear dog chewing in the background. When Disney, this was one of the ones that was an option for Disney to pick, but Disney mainly went for the ones that had more of like a magical theme to them to a degree, as opposed to this one, which is more of like a coming of age story. Or as in the movie, there is the comparison of a caterpillar going into a chrysalis and finally coming out a butterfly story. And that variation. So, Only Yesterday is a movie that flashes back and forth between what would have been 1982 and then I believe it is in the 1960s, 1966. So it's flashing back and forth between these 2 years of this young woman's life, of Taiko's life. And so it's like her in the present, going through certain things, and then her remembering other things in the past that to a degree tie to what's going on with her in the present. From her 5th grade self is the way that it's described. Her 10-year-old self and her 27-year-old self. And this is something that I really like, how they go back and forth with this and how they tie certain things together. Because the thing is, I really hope I don't have to take that away from you. But if it gets too wrestly, I might have to. We'll see. And then she proceeds to make it wrestle more. And I like how they do this, because the thing is that... Okay, nope. You're not going to have that for right now. You can have it back when I'm done. I will give it back when I am done. Go get your rope. Go get your chewy rope. That works better. That one's quiet. It's quiet until she drops it. But I like how they do the flashing back and forth between present and past and everything like that, and how they tie them together. One of the other things is that it is very much this commentary on the fact that like experiences that we have when we're kids can still very much stick with us when we are adults. And even throughout the course of this movie, we see other points where she is saying, oh, well, I wasn't allowed to do that when I was a kid, but then when I got into high school and when I got to college, I tried it more and blah, 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 blah. And I didn't end up being very good at it, but I wanted to try. We see that through some of the experiences that she has, and I'll go over them when we get to them. So this one is a 27-year-old woman flashing back to her 10-year-old self, so about 5th grade is what they say. And one of the things with that is back when I was in 5th grade is when we were starting to do a lot of like American history and American Revolution and Civil War type stuff. Now, bear in mind, this was in the 90s, in the late 90s, and no, this would have been early 2000s, because 2001 for 9/11 was when I was in 4th grade, and I remember that one. So 2002 would have been this time frame. Hi, yeah, I know, I love you too. I love you too. You're a good girl. You're my good girl. And I got it, you too. She's like, you are weird. Pet me. Yes, I will pet you, silly girl. My good girl. So like Hamilton was not a thing at the time, so there wasn't really this big surge of like, oh, you have to learn about American history and everything like that, and it's really cool. I had a hard time with that at first. And then I found a show called Liberty's Kids on PBS that was like about the American Revolution told through the eyes of like 3 teenagers. I may have mentioned this before on the channel, but told through the eyes of like 3 teenagers, and that helped me connect more with what was going on during the American Revolution, and subsequently has given me a big interest in history. But going into the actual movie, so the movie starts off where we see Taiko in 1982. By the way, my sister was born in 1980, so she would have been about 2 years old, roughly, when the time frame of this movie is supposed to be happening for the present day stuff. And she is going to be taking a vacation from work. She's just like an office worker, and she is going to be taking a break and, you know, going on a little vacation out to the countryside because she is going to be going there to go and pick certain types of wildflowers that are a crop out there that they use to help, that back in, you know, feudal Japan era and even now are used to, or even at that time were used to make rouge and different colored, you know, different types of red that were used to make, you know, rouge for makeup and everything like that. That was very costly way back when. So we have that. And she is going to go and do that as a vacation. And then we have it set up where her 10-year-old self is finding out that like a bunch of her friends are going to be going away for the summer and going to visit, you know, their families' hometowns and everything like that during summer break. And she goes and talks to her mom and is like, okay, well, you know, are we going to go anywhere for summer? You know, are we going to go to a village and see family and everything like that? And the mom's like, well, your grandma lives here with us. Your grandpa's dead, and we don't have any other family in any other villages. And so the daughter, so Taiko, ends up kind of complaining about the fact that she wants to go somewhere for the summer. And her 2 older sisters, Yaiko and Nanako, do not ask me which one is which. I don't remember. I know the one with the longer black hair is the middle daughter, but I don't remember which one is which necessarily. I think Nanako is the older one, if I remember correctly, and then Taiko is the middle one. And I don't know if that's correct. I don't necessarily care. But what ends up happening is like they end up mentioning the fact that, oh well, you could take her to like the hot springs in Atami, which is like this, hot spring resort area and everything like that. And Taiko thinks that that sounds really nice because of the way that they described it. I was like, oh, there's all these different types of baths that you can go to and everything, and it's really nice and it's really relaxing and everything. And so we have a whole bunch of that stuff, like setting up for that. And then we cut back to the present. So we're cutting back and forth a lot between the past and the present. And in the present in the 1982, Taiko is like on the phone talking with her sister, talking with Nanako, and talking about like, everything that happened at the bath and everything like that. It's like, you and you and our other sister, convinced me that there were mermaids and everything like that, and a bunch of that stuff. Because Taiko is a little bit of, and even it's stated, she's not a normal kid by, their family standards, or even to a degree by, certain types of like Japanese standards. She's not exceedingly the best in a lot of things in school and stuff like that. Like math is like her low score and everything like that, which is kind of like highlighted in the movie. That math is one of the things that she has, a hard time with, which I can understand. Not necessarily with math. Math was something that I generally was pretty good at. Don't ask me how, but I was. For me, it was reading. That was a hard thing for me, where it was, because I have dyslexia, and I don't remember when that was diagnosed that I had dyslexia. But like I have dyslexia, and it was just hard for me to find stuff that I actually wanted to read. But I still liked, telling stories and listening to stories and stuff like that. So that wasn't an issue. And different things along those lines. So it was like I had to find, it was harder for me to find stuff for me to enjoy reading when it came to like stuff that we had to do for like reading assignments and stuff like that. I digress. But so Taiko and her sister are talking, and we're finding out that Taiko is going to go to the hometown of her brother-in-law, of Nanako's husband's family, and go there. And Taiko makes the joke, it's like, now thanks to you, I've got myself a good farm family, a country family, and everything like that I can go and see. And she's going to go there and pick, these types of flowers for, and, for her vacation, and like live this kind of like farm life and everything like that. And her sister is just like, why would you go do that? Why don't you go do something else? But also, talking about the fact of like, oh, why didn't you go meet that nice guy that mom tried to set you up with, and everything like that about, it's like, oh, the whole trying to set your kid up with, people and everything like that, as this happens in lots of cultures. My parents don't really do that with me, thank God. But that type of a thing where it's just like, oh, well, he's a nice guy or she's a nice girl type of a thing, trying to do that and set up, set Taiko up with people, with the, guys and everything like that. So we're cutting back and forth with that and everything. And then we cut back to the past in the 1960s, where we have it that we do see Taiko and her grandmother go to the hot spring place, and, the grandma is getting a massage, which I don't blame the grandma in the slightest, and Taiko just kind of goes off, and she ends up going to a bunch of these different, luxurious baths and everything like that. She's like, well, there's the Grimm Brothers bath, and the lemon, and the mermaid, and the pansy or posy bath or whatever. And then eventually she ends up going into the big Roman bath setup, and unfortunately she ends up actually becoming like, from having like heat exhaustion, she ends up fainting, and thankfully she doesn't end up drowning, but they save her and she's fine and everything like that. But and this one is also, it's one of the movies that is a very good depiction to a degree of like real life, and it's showing like how stuff was in Japan in schools in like the 1960s and everything like that. And this different comparisons of like, Taiko and her older sisters with Nanako and Yaiko and everything like that, in regards to like, interests that they have in. We also get like a bit of an, some other explanations here. in regards to like how the family, kind of works and everything like that. We find out that Nanako, who is the oldest, okay, so she is the oldest, that for her, for that summer, for the 1966 summer, that was when the Beatles first came to Japan. And we end up, that's when they first came to Japan, and that's when all of this, the big Beatles craze and the band craze and everything happened and everything. And, during the same time frame, like Yaiko has, she, has like this crush on like an actress and everything like that and everything. But for Taiko, that's like her sister is going through those types of things for like big pop cultural stuff, but that's not necessarily stuff that, Taiko would have necessarily been super familiar with at the time. I'm like, she probably was aware of when the Beatles showed up and everything like that, but those weren't her bands. Her bands were, when she, later on when she hit her teenage years. For her, this is, when she had, her, this is when she was, like 10 years old. And this is when all of these different, summer memories are coming forward and everything like that. And the family, Taiko has no brothers. It is their father, their mother, their grandmother, and then the 3 daughters. They also mention a dog at some point, but I don't think we ever see the dog. As far as I'm aware, I do not remember ever seeing a dog in the like flashback parts of the movies that they had a dog. We also have this another moment where Taiko is on her way to, the train to go and get headed off to go out to the countryside for her, for her vacation. And she walks by this stand that is selling pineapples. And she has this flashback to where, at one point when she was a kid, during the 1966, that her father had managed to buy a pineapple. And they're like, like back then it was just like, oh my God, you managed to get a hold of one of these. Wow. It must have like cost the earth or whatever is what the mom says. And they're just like, oh, well, it's, look, I got the chance to get it, but I don't know how to cut it and everything like that. And they're like, okay, well, how are we supposed to eat it? Which, I mean, that is generally kind of like the first thought when you're, haven't seen a pineapple before and you're like, okay, I know there's fruit inside, but how do we get to it? And so we have that, and we have that, like, they set it off to the side. And there's this running joke with bananas during this bit where it's just like, the other daughters go and like get bananas and they like look at the pineapple while they're eating the banana, which is kind of funny. And then Nanako finds out how to cut it, and she comes home and we watch her like actually she is cutting it correctly for certain ways to cut pineapple. Generally the way I've been told to cut pineapple is, cut off both ends and then slice around the outside, and then you can, divide up the middle as you want, after, get rid of the core. And like the family is just watching as this is going on, and they're all rather fascinated by this and everything like that. And then once they get it all divided up and everything, and they're all trying it, they're all just like, it's not very sweet. It doesn't taste like it does when it comes from the can. And, different stuff like that. And, it's like neither of the other 2 sisters, neither Nanako nor Yaiko, were very much impressed with the pineapple. The grandma eats it and not Taiko likes it, but the mom and the dad aren't really all that impressed with it. Part of the problem is I'm pretty sure that the pineapple was not ripe enough. Unfortunately, with pineapples, it's better to wait till they're riper before you eat them. As I have learned from my dad when it comes to when he buys pineapple every now and then, buys whole pineapple every now and then we dice it up and it tastes pretty good after it's been ripened. But, so we have that. But I don't think they let it ripen enough. But, then the sisters just go and get bananas and everything again. And they eat that. And then, Taiko makes a comment of like, banana is still the king of fruit when it comes to that stuff. And then we cut back to where she's, walking through the train station again and everything. And, going through all of that stuff. And we have this other points in time, while she's still getting on the train and getting headed there and everything like that. She's going to, take the overnight train and sleep on the train and everything. And we cut back to, again, where she's younger again, and she's sharing, very enthusiastically, like, how, a school report that she had to do, like a book report or a story report or something like that she had to do. And she's very happily sharing that with her mom. And her mom is very happy with her for that. But then we get this moment where it's revealed that Taiko tends to not necessarily eat all of her food, and that she tends to be very picky with her food. As a person who is and was and will most likely always be rather picky, I know exactly how Taiko feels. But like the mom kind of chastises her for that, for, not eating all of her food, not eating what she's given, and kind of chastises her. Sometimes I wish you were a little less of a girl who writes, book reports that are slightly above average, as opposed to, and actually eats all of her food and blah, 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 blah. Which I don't know if that was like an English translation thing that they did or not, to make that sound right or what, I'm not sure. I know that the stereotypical view that Americans tend to have of not just Japanese, but like Asian people in general, unfortunately, and this is a stereotypical view that we tend to have, and in some cases stuff that, promotes that in certain cases, that, they very much want kids to excel in school and everything like that. And other Ghibli movies have had other things where that is a part of it. Like, I know that that's a part of, like, From Up on Poppy Hill and with Whisper of the Heart and everything like that. Where, like, school and excelling in school and stuff like that is an important thing. Which, I mean, school is an important thing in most cultures, so that's not necessarily, like, a bad thing. But, so we have a bunch of that stuff, and then we have this whole moment where it's involving, stuff at school where, like, they have this where, like, Taiko will, eat certain parts of her meal, but the boy that's, like her desk mate doesn't like to eat certain parts of his meal. So they're like trying to trade about, well, I'll drink this for you if you eat that for me next time and stuff like that. And stuff, because they're only allowed to leave like one thing on their plate and everything, because they're supposed to give them like balanced meals and everything like that, which is probably a better version of a balanced meal than what we have here in the US, in all honesty. But at least in the US, you're able to pick which stuff you want on your plate, as opposed to just, they give you everything and you're just to have to eat everything regardless of whether or not you like it. And then we have it where they're having this like student council type thing. And, they're discussing about, oh, well, having like a hall monitor, and, should the hall monitor, if someone's running in the hallway, should the hall monitor be able to go back, grab them, and then make them go back to where they started, and then have them walk the rest of the way. And Taiko's friend, Tsuneko, who is this very, I don't know how to describe her. She's very know-it-all is kind of a degree, but also a little bit of like holier than thou, for the way that she acts and everything like that. She is kind of the embodiment of like a little bit of like the girl who is popular and will have, like her group of friends around her, but she's not necessarily mean. Because Tsuneko isn't necessarily mean. She's just very much not, very much like the I know better than everybody type of a thing. That type of a thing is the way that she acts. And, so she's pointing out stuff, and then they get to the fact that it's just like, oh, well, there are certain people that are not, eating all of their food. And she seems to be looking directly at Taiko when she says this. And it's like, there are people in other countries, because like this is coinciding with what's happening in, I believe it is the Vietnam War, I believe is when this would be coinciding with, for 1966, I believe coincides with, the Vietnam War. It's not the Korean War, because that's in the 50s. So it would be the Vietnam War. and everything. So she's like kind of the using the whole, oh well, there's people starving in other countries, so you should eat all of your food and be grateful for it and everything like that. So kind of like that mentality and everything. So, there's that much stuff going on there. So we have that, and then we have other moments where we're, as I said, we're cutting back and forth and seeing Tycho get on the train in the present day and everything. And then we have this, this other big chunk of a flashback where we have, where we have Tycho kind of dealing with kind of like, her first crush type of a thing. So, we have it where we see these three girls from this other class come in the fifth grade, come into their classroom and be like, hey, where's Tycho? And they're like, she's over there. And they tell Tycho that a boy, Hirota, in their class likes her. And one of the other girls from Tycho's class goes and shows them this, it's like graffiti written on the wall of, it's like blah, 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 loves Tycho and that type of a thing. It's like what's written on Hirota loves Tycho and everything like that. And there's like this like stick drawn thing with like an arrow at the top. I don't know if this is supposed to represent a house of some kind. I don't know, but it's supposed to be like the whole, Billy Bob loves Charlene that gets written on the water tower. Joke. And they go and look at that, and they're just like, what the heck? And then they go, and then Tsuneko and one of the other girls goes to the other fifth grade class and confronts Hirota. And they're like, hey, what are you doing? You can't put that stuff up on, the walls. It's not right. It's not fair. And he's like very befuddled by this. And it's revealed that he did not put that on the wall, that it was the other girls that put that on the wall as a way to, I guess, make fun of Hirota, which is mean, and make fun of Tycho, which is, again, kind of mean. And they're like, well, you said you like her, but she's way off in the clouds, and she'd never notice you, and everything like that. And we see, that type of stuff. And Hirota just looks very embarrassed about this. And I feel sorry for the kid because he did not ask for this. This was shoved upon him and he did not ask for this the same way that Tycho did not ask for this. Then, Tsuneko kind of tells him off and then she leaves along with one of their other friends. And then they tell Tycho what they did. And I was like, we told him that he shouldn't write stuff on walls. It's not true. And while this is going on, they kind of are running, and then they stop, and then they, keep, not running again and everything like that to go against their own rule and everything. And we find out that Hirota is actually a really good pitcher for the other class, and they have like these, interleague baseball, inter-class baseball tournament stuff like that, where it's like, boys from, this class of boys will go against this class of boys for the baseball team and everything like that, because baseball is really big in Japan. And even way back then, it was very, very big in Japan. And stuff. So we have that, and, so we have the two classes going up against each other, and, the two classes are, of course, watching, the rest of the girls that are not on the, the girls and the other ones that are not on the team are, like, watching, and each of them are, like, the girls from Hirota's class are all rooting for like him and everything, and then the girls from Tycho's class are all rooting for like the guys from their class and everything. And Tycho is just having this very moment where she's like, I guess he is cute, but it's like it's like this 10-year-old thing where it's like a crush, and it's like, well, stuff has said that he likes you, so do you like him? And Tycho keeps, she's getting very like embarrassed and flustered and everything like that as all of this is going on. And the other class ends up winning, and then Tycho ends up starting to make her way home, and on her way home she ends up running into Hirota, and they're again both very flustered, and it is adorable. And Hirota eventually manages to squeak out, do you like cloudy days or sunny days? Which do you like better? And it is so adorable how they do this. And Tycho's like, I like cloudy days. And he's like, me too. And it's like there's this little, it's like they're a matching pair type of a thing, and this type of a joke and everything like that. And he's just like really, really happy about that. And she's kind of happy too. And he, runs off. And then Tycho is just kind of like, it's the moment where you find out that like you have something in common with your crush, they acknowledged you. And it's not like Hiroto was like being mean to her before or anything like that. It's not like she was even all that aware of him before all of this started, but it's still adorable for what happens. And what ends up, all of that ends up happening. And, Tycho goes home and she's just, like floating on air, like she's in ecstasy, floating on air on the way home and just like, starry-eyed little girl and everything like that, which is just adorable. Hearts and all of that stuff. And then we cut back to where we have it that Tycho laying in her bed in her apartment. This would obviously be before she, leaves. And she's remembering about that interaction, kind of the way that you fondly look back on like a first crush and being like, in some cases that does go somewhere and in some cases it doesn't. And in this case, it didn't really go anywhere. It was just a cute, first crush and everything. And she just starts giggling about the answer. And then we cut back to the train and everything. And she's thinking about the fact that, she's starting to realize it was just like, I never intended to bring my 10-year-old self along with me on this train trip, but I guess I am. And everything like that. And we have this, kind of, an illusion of this where like we see kids running down the hall in the train and everything like that. And, so, she's just, still traveling on her way out to the countryside. And then eventually we end up, cutting back to the past again, where we have it that it is the moment in 5th grade where the boys go and play sports and the girls have to go and have a presentation in the gym. And you get to learn about the fact that your body is changing and everything like that. And they have the period talk with the girls. And so we have a bunch of that happens there, and we have it where the other girls in Tycho's class are all just, discussing stuff and everything like that. And, one of the other girls who's like a little bit taller than the other ones is pointing out the fact of like, sometimes girls that, are early developers and different things along those lines. So we have like those moments that are happening there. And side note, there's the way that they handle this, and I understand that this is happening in 1966 and that now it's like, 2023 and even back in, 2002 when this talk probably would have had, been given to me and, groups and everything like that, end of elementary school, beginning of, middle school here in the US and everything like that. There are so much better ways that this could be done in regards to how this talk is presented to people, and everything like that. So there's so many better ways that can be done. And the fact that they don't need to keep this a secret from the boys, and that the boys should be well aware of what the girls are going through, so that way they understand how that's working. But that's part of the conflict as to what happened here, because we have it where it is revealed that the boys find out about what's going on with the girls. They start finding out about the period and everything like that. They don't really know what that means. And they end up, starting to, run around the halls and like flip girls' skirts up and everything like that. And some of them get their comeuppance, because if they try that, some of the girls will then hit them with brooms and stuff like that, which I'm like, good job. Good job. Where are the teachers when all of this is happening? Why are the teachers not stopping them? So the boys are being boys and being idiots. And we find out that one of Tycho's friends actually ended up telling one of the boys about what the period was. And he then ended up telling all the other boys. And now it's just like this whole thing and everything like that. So we have those moments, and the friend, I think Rie is the friend's name, and she gets like scolded by the other girls about it, all of this, and it's like, well, you're not supposed to tell them. Boys are stupid and you can't trust them. And, it's like they'll tell the other boys and all of this other stuff, which is technically not wrong in this regard. He did tell all the other boys. Um, and so it's like that's how the boys find out about this and everything. And again, you'd think the teachers would do something for the way that the boys are acting and everything. And eventually it ends up being that, Taiko ends up getting a cold and she has to sit out of PE. And her and Rie are talking and sitting out of PE at the same time. And Taiko has like very explicitly told Rie, I'm sick. That's why I'm sitting out. I'm not on my period. And it's, because of something that Rie says, Taiko is like, you can't tell that to the boys. They're going to think that every girl that sits out of PE is on her period and everything. And, so they're having all of that discussion. And the kids are playing dodgeball, which it's like, hey, if I will take the excuse to not have to play dodgeball, considering I've been hit in the face with them before, and dodgeball is a stupid effing stupid sport to begin with, to have kids be playing it, it's like, take this ball and throw it at one of your classmates. Why? Why? I do not know who invented dodgeball, and they should be locked up for child abuse if they did. For whoever did it, whoever invented dodgeball needs to be locked up for child abuse. It's like, okay, adults can do it. That's fine, because they're choosing to do it. Forcing kids to do it in school is ridiculous. I hated dodgeball. I hated sports in general when I was in school, but dodgeball was just like, why are you making me do this? This is ridiculous. I have issues with dodgeball. It's like, I didn't care that much for the sports and PE and anything anyway beyond swimming, and even then, it's like, I'd rather just walk around the gym for like 50 minutes than have to do a bunch of the other sports stuff. It's just like, at least I'm walking and doing something. I don't care about football. Why are you making me play football and soccer? I am not good at this. So we have those moments going on, and one of the boys runs over because like the ball got knocked away, and Rie tries to pick it up, and he just like says, don't do that, don't touch that, you'll contaminate it or whatever, and I'll get the period. And we get these dichotomies between the way that, Taiko is looking at this and the way that Rie is looking at this, because Rie is very much handling it with just like, oh, like letting it slide off and everything like that with what he said. And, Taiko is just not amused by this. And she actually ends up kind of yelling at Rie a little bit or whatever. But they end up making up by the end of all of this. By the end of this ordeal, Rie and Taiko end up like making up and everything like that. And Rie actually, kind of makes the comment about the fact of like, my mom told me that my period is nothing to be ashamed of. It's just the way that my body works, and there's stuff there that they do that then, and I can tie back to Turning Red with this for the Pixar movie Turning Red, because that actually took a lot of inspiration to a degree from some of the cultural stuff or different ways of viewing things that are in Miyazaki movies and stuff like that, because I know that the woman who was the director of Turning Red is a big Miyazaki fan. So there's kind of like elements in there and stuff like that they're kind of like showing and everything that are somewhat similar there for how you handle certain topics and everything. And then we cut back to the present, and we're going to be in the present for a while now. And Taiko is having this, kind of discussion in her head. And Taiko has a lot of monologues throughout the movie where she's like, explaining stuff about her childhood, or explaining stuff about, like, in this case, she's making the comparison to the fact that, a caterpillar must become a butterfly, but to do that, they must become a chrysalis first. And she's just like, maybe I have to become a chrysalis to become a butterfly that I want to be. And it's not like Taiko is unhappy in her life. She, she says she enjoys her job for what it is. But she's just, she just doesn't quite feel wholly, set in, happy, fully comfortable in her life the way that she could feel, or the way that she would like to feel. So we kind of have that moment there, and she gets off the train and she arrives at the town and everything. And the guy who's supposed to meet her at the train station actually kind of fell asleep, and then he ends up trying to like run after her after he realizes that the train shows up and he's trying to figure out where she is. And he runs up to her and he's just like, "Are you Tycho?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, and he takes her bag and starts walking, and she's like, "Hey," and she ends up taking it back from him, and like he ends up finally introducing himself as Toshio, I believe is his name. Yeah, Toshio. And he finally introduces himself, and they have this whole funny bit where she's like, "I thought you were a bag snatcher," and everything like that. And he explains that he's a son of a member of the family. He's like an extended member of like the family she's gonna be staying with. While she's there and everything. And this is not the first time that Tycho has been to go out to the country and everything like that. Like the year before, she had gone and like picked rice there, and now she's gonna pick the flowers this year and everything. You know, it's this whole, she thought that he was a bag snatcher, and well, he did walk up and literally take her bag from her and everything like that without fully introducing himself. And so we get that whole little funny interaction there. And then they head off to, they get into his car, and as they're, driving, and he has a Subaru. So do my mom and I. My mom and I both have Subarus. So we have, them driving and everything like that, and they're listening to this weird country folk music from like Hungary or whatever, in the car and everything. And as they're driving, and they're just like talking about, that Toshio had been a businessman in Tokyo, and then he came back to start doing organic farming. Because that ended up becoming more of a passion of his and everything like that. And he has this organic farm that he runs with his friend and everything, and how they don't use pesticides and how they do stuff by hand. They still use machinery to a degree when it comes to like, certain things, but stuff where they don't want to use chemicals as much as, where they tend to have a bit more of a, hands-on approach to things. So we have this moment where they're just, all this discussing and talking and everything like that, and enjoying, kind of getting to know each other as they're driving from the train station out to the countryside where the farm is. And we're getting these beautiful landscapes and everything like that, showing off, the beauty of like the Japanese countryside. I mean, like we saw this in My Neighbor Totoro, and even to a degree we saw this in Grave of the Fireflies and stuff like that, where Miyazaki and his crew are really, really good at doing, backgrounds and landscapes and everything like that, where it's just like, this in and of itself would be an amazing portrait to have. And everything. So we're getting a bunch of that stuff and seeing all of that, just seeing like this little get to know you thing between the two of them. And he's asking her why she wanted to come out here and do, pick the flowers and everything like that. And she's like, well, it just sounded really nice, like a fun thing to do, where, and it's not like she's just going to do the leisurely thing. She is putting in the work to do all of this and everything like that, to have this whole experience and everything like that. So it's not like she's going to just, kick back and relax. She's really going to put in the work for all of this, and she's ready for that. She's like all ready to get going on, work when they finally get to the fields and everything like that. And they end up, then we're going to, then we meet the family that she's going to be there. There's, the husband and the wife, and then there's the grandma. And, Tycho is, very much welcomed by them and everything like that. And we're getting all of that, getting Tycho all ready, and Toshio tries to take a picture of her, and he falls over and everything like that. So we're having this like cute moment there between the two of them. And she gets going on picking the flowers, and we're getting this like monologue from her, where it is stated that like the best time to pick the flowers is early in the morning, where the pins on them are still soft from the dew. So we see her like, try to like pick one barehanded at first, just to see how it feels. And then she, puts her gloves back on, and she starts, picking all of the flowers and everything like that, because they pick the flowers, and then they go through the whole process of like turning it into rouge. And it's actually kind of a bit of an educational thing here, because she is explaining how the fact that like, during like feudal Japan era, like this area was known for raising these flowers, for growing these flowers, but how it was like, the barons of the land, the higher ups in the land that really made the money out of all of this, and that a lot of the people that were part of the peasant class that were the ones that actually um, picked the crop didn't really have the ability to be able to afford the rouge that it made. Um, and how this yellow flour, once oxidized and squished and everything like that, eventually becomes this really really brilliant red that is quite literally worth its weight in gold, is one of the descriptions for it. And we see them picking the flowers, and we see them going through the process and like learning the process of how it goes from like the flowers all the way up to where it is to be able to be processed to become rouge and everything. And how you have to stamp the flowers and then eventually press them and oxidize them and squish them down, and then all of that stuff. But not everything, nothing is wasted, because they even save all of the liquid that is the runoff liquid from it during the whole the process of squeezing all the liquid out. They keep all of that stuff, because then they can then use that liquid to then dye, as the peasant girls did way back in the day, that they would then use that liquid to dye handkerchiefs and cloth and other stuff, beautiful pinks and oranges and stuff like that, and yellows, and fill their world with color as it's explained. So we get this this big comparison there, where we get this explanation. It's a really nice bit where they explain how this was developed in the first place. And again, it's like this whole thing of like something that we take for granted now was like something that took so much more to do way back then. But it's also like the whole thing of like nowadays it's like, oh, I'm just going to go buy a thing of lipstick or whatever. And back then it was just like, this is going to cost you so much, because even like the peasants who would pick it in the first place would not even be able to imagine being able to buy this product that they themselves actually worked to create. So we see that, and we see this whole, continuation there. And we get all these like shots of, not just the making of the, turning it into rouge, but also these beautiful, beautiful shots of like the flowers themselves, that just look like they would be amazing portraits, to just like have up in your house. Again, Studio Ghibli, and I mean, like a lot of movies and shows have this, where like, you can go through like a frame by frame, and like you will find stuff that looks like it could just be like a big portrait on your wall. I know that like there's stuff like this with like Disney movies, like with Sleeping Beauty. There's like the Enchanted Forest area, that there's just like shots in that could just be like a painting, because it was a painting in the background. Same thing with like a whole bunch of other stuff where they would have like matte background paintings that are just gorgeous, and this is a very similar thing. So we have that. And we see them working very hard and everything like that, and Taiko is pulling her own weight and everything like that. So we have that. And then we have it where one of the daughter, Naoko, I think is the daughter's name, who's the daughter of the family that Taiko is staying with, that she is talking to her mother, and she's trying to explain to her mother that she needs, I think it was like 5,000 yen to buy Pumas, Puma sports shoes and everything like that, because everybody has them. And the mom's like, why do you need those, and why do you need to spend 5,000 on a pair of shoes and everything like that? She's like, well, because they're Pumas and everybody has them. And she's just like talking about that and everything, and Taiko ends up kind of laughing about it. And then Taiko has this flashback to when she was a kid, so we're cutting back to the past again, and she even makes the comment of like, and just like that, my 10-year-old self was back. And we're having this moment where she's remembering that at one point, during this year of experiences, where she is talking, where like her sisters are arguing about the fact, or not arguing, but discussing the fact. This is happening at like the dinner table, where the sisters, one of the older sisters, is like, well, you, I had a new, I had to get a new kimono because of this and blah, 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 and a bunch of this other stuff. And Taiko was complaining about the fact that she, um, is going to end up with getting like hand-me-downs and everything like that, as opposed to getting something new for herself. Um, which, I mean, there was a 12 years age difference between my sister and I, and there wasn't really a whole lot of like hand-me-downs in that regard. Um, my nieces kind of do hand-me-downs, but they're also both around like the same size and frame shape, so they can like, share clothes and stuff like that as well. Um, so there's not as much of an issue with that. There's still a bit of an issue with that at times and everything, but like they can, trade clothes and stuff like that as well. Um, so it's not entirely like, oh no, I don't want your hand-me-downs and stuff like that. And I've given them stuff too. Um, to like for them to, see if they want it for shirts that I don't want anymore, and they enjoy going through that stuff. And so does my sister, and my mom's giving them stuff too. But I guess I don't know if that, it is technically a hand-me-down, but, if it's still good clothing, I mean, like, why get rid of it? I mean, if someone, would like it, and everything, but, like, Taiko, as, like, the baby, kind of gets a little bit spoiled by their father, because, like, he will buy her, like, new clothes for her doll and stuff like that, even if it's not her birthday or Christmas and stuff like that. And like, the sisters are making the point that it's just like, well, it's one thing, it's like you get those little gifts every now and then, but if we get one big gift when it's not Christmas or our birthday, you seem to throw a fit. And then, one of Yaiko is like, well, I'm gonna, I got a new purse or whatever. And Taiko is like, so that means that you'll give me your, enamel handbag or whatever now that you have a new purse. And then the other sister, Nanako, is just like, well, why haven't you given that to her already? It's for babies. And that just makes Taiko not want it now. And then she ends up complaining to her father later about the fact that I don't have a purse and Yaiko won't give me hers. And he's just like, yeah, you said you didn't want it, so that's not my problem. And so we're having this, big argument there, this kind of like, not argument, but this, sister rivalry, sibling rivalry type of a thing. Again, there's like 12 years between between my sister and I, and we don't necessarily have this type of an issue. I mean, like, I know that there's times where we probably fought about stuff, but it wasn't this type of a thing. My dad has had some issues, has had like sibling rivalry as like the oldest with like some of his younger siblings at times, particularly my aunt, who's, the next youngest one, or the second oldest. And then like my mom was the baby daughter on her side among her siblings, but she had two younger brothers. So I don't really know 100% how all the different sibling rivalries shake down in that regard, but I do know that amongst my nieces and nephew, there are definitely sibling rivalry things that happen. So while I have not personally been a part of it, I know what it looks like for sibling rivalry and stuff like that. And so we see that, and we see this whole, conversation happening there and everything, and, all of that. And then what ends up happening is the family are going to go out and have dinner at like a nice Chinese restaurant and have like this very nice dinner. And Taiko is kind of upset because she thought it was just going to be her mom and her dad and her. And then it's Yaiko is coming with them, and Taiko is just not very happy about that, because she just wanted to have, parent and her time for her and her parents and everything like that, which, I mean, is understandable to just at least want to have some alone time with your parents where, like, you can at least for a moment feel like you're having this special time there. But, so there's that. So Taiko, eventually ends up getting ready to go. And she has this like very flowery child looking purse, and she really doesn't want to use that to go on this, very nice dinner thing and everything like that. And she ends up complaining that she doesn't have a purse to go out with and everything like that. So then the mom tells Yaiko to go and get her purse and give it to Taiko. And she kind of like huffs off, does come back and like drops the purse on Taiko's head. And then Taiko kind of throws a little bit of a tantrum about that. And Taiko ends up, saying that she doesn't want to go. And they're just like, okay, fine. And we're having these moments where, like, at this little sequence, we are getting very much showing the whole fact of, like, because in Japan it is generally considered very rude to have your shoes on past certain points in the house. I know that there's certain times where it's like an exception can be made for certain things, or that there's like, you have like slippers that you wear when you're in your house, as opposed to then you take off the slippers and you put on your actual shoes before you go outside. And I know there's like a cleanliness factor to this, but I know there's also like a respect factor to this as well. I don't know exactly where like that line is drawn for what that is qualified for. But other Miyazaki movies within the same time frame have shown similar things that take place in like Japan itself that show this, you take off your shoes before you go in and you put on the slippers, and then you put your take your slippers off and put your shoes back on before you leave the house. So that's kind of like very highlighted in that time in, this part of the scene. And, so we see that the mom and the dad and Yaiko are getting ready to leave, and Taiko just kind of has this realization that she does really want to go, and she does not want to be left behind. She panics and she runs out without her shoes on. And, this causes her father to come over and actually ends up slapping her because he sees that she doesn't have her shoes on and she's outside, and he, strikes her without thinking. The mom intervenes, and Taiko is very frightened by this, which is understandable. She's just been slapped and hurt, and she collapses and starts sobbing and everything. And, we have, Taiko is revealed to be telling this story to Naoko, who is the daughter of the family she's staying with. Talking to her about this while they're picking tomatoes to kind of show Naoko a little bit about, you don't necessarily have to, like this, just a story in general that happens. And everything in this comparison to Naoko wanting to have, the pumas and everything. And Taiko explains that was the first and only time that my father has ever struck me. And Taiko explains it. So there, that night I just lay there. I thought, I was just like, I have to be adopted. I have to be, otherwise why am I being singled out for this and everything like that. And, Naoko, sorry if I'm mispronouncing some of these names. I'm sorry. Ends up explaining that, like, yes, her father has, hit her, like, slapped her a little bit, but nothing very hard and not very often. And Taiko ends up explaining that sometimes she wishes it had been done a little bit more as opposed to just like the one time, because then you wonder what it was that you really did wrong as opposed to something that happens more often. I have never been struck by either of my parents, but I know that certain cultures have like different perceptions of what is considered, disciplinary as opposed to child abuse, as opposed to what is very much not needed type stuff when it comes to, disciplining your children. And stuff. And there's this whole range of, what's considered acceptable and what's not considered acceptable and all of that other stuff. But I don't really want to get into that discussion here. But, Naoko says that she's not going to be trying to get the pumas anymore. She'll just, either save up her own money or whatever. And then they run into Toshio, who is there talking with them and everything like that. And, so they're, having a fun conversation there with all of them. And he invites Taiko to want to go to this a mountain retreat area that they have. That in the winter they have like skiing there and stuff like that, to go there and just, have a nice little day off and everything like that. And while they're there, they're having this, conversation, and Taiko ends up asking him about mathematics, where it comes to like division by fractions and stuff like that, which, God, as I mentioned earlier, Math wasn't necessarily something I always had a problem with. There were issues occasionally where it's just like, okay, I need to explain to me a little bit differently and then I can understand it. And this is where we have this happening with Taiko, where Taiko is explaining to Toshio that she likens being able to understand how to do like division by fractions and everything like that really quickly means that if you can do it really quickly like that, then you're going to know exactly what you're going to do in life and you're going to be really good at it. And if you can't do that, then you're going to have a much harder time in life. The way that it's kind of like explained in the Japanese is like a jinxed life if you can't figure it out, and a smooth life if you can, for like a comparison there. And we cut back to the past again, where we have Taiko giving her mother her, fractions, dividing by fractions test and everything like that, that she got like a 25% on, which is not good in any setup of that. And she gives us a reason for why she didn't do very well because of art class and blowing to make pictures and everything, and the mom kind of like is like, okay, because you got a headache from that, okay, fine, but go and talk to your sister and see if she can explain it to you better. And Taiko wants to talk to Nanako, but Nanako's not home, so she ends up having to going and talk with Yaiko instead. And Yaiko looks at it, and Yaiko is just not impressed by this at all, and she runs downstairs. She's just not comprehending how bad Taiko got on this test, how bad of a score, and she runs down to her mother, and it's just like, how can I help her like this? I can't do this. She's not a normal child. And then the mom is just like, Taiko has never been a normal child. And in the Japanese, they use slow as opposed to normal, where they explain that, Taiko seemed to be a bit of a slow child in this regard, when it came to some stuff for math, as opposed to other stuff where she's like really good in other things like science and other stuff like that. But this is the one that she just has the problem in when it comes to math. And so the mom and like Taiko ends up hearing this conversation, and then Yaiko and her sit down, and they're talking, and Yaiko is trying to explain to Taiko, that's going to be confusing, how to explain how to do the fractions and everything. And Taiko is just kind of like okay, I know my times tables, but this whole flipping it and everything like that when it comes to multiplying and dividing and everything like that, and how it's just weird, and like dividing a fraction into a smaller fraction, and trust me, girl, I can understand this. I think I was able to understand how to do division by fractions, but I'm also like, this whole concept of like making a smaller fraction out of a small fraction already is just like, why are we doing this? Even more, it's like tablespoons into teaspoons and tablespoons into cups and into ounces and all this other stuff. It's just like, just tell me what I need. And like they use examples of like dividing apples into further smaller bits of an apple and other stuff like that. And even Yaiko was a little bit like, well, just forget about that. Just do this. Like she's like ignoring that. Like, okay, that's not happening here. And so they're doing that whole thing, and then we cut to where we have Taiko sitting at the TV and eating like apples with their grandma. Earlier on, the grandma had made the comment while the girls were arguing over like getting gifts and stuff like that, that the grandma had actually made the comment that they are actually being very selfish, in the way that they're acting and everything like that, because like she comes from a time frame, because like this is the 1960s. Their mother and father probably would have been born and growing up during a lot of stuff that was happening in World War II. So like Grave of the Fireflies time frame. And their grandma would have been very aware of a whole bunch of stuff that was going on during, before that and everything like that. If you can follow like the timelines there, for like actual world history. If you go back like 20 years and 20 years and 20 years and everything like that to like set everything up. or because we never get like the ages of the parents, but like I'm pretty sure the father would have probably been like too young to actually fight during World War II. But he may have fought in World War II, but I doubt that given the time frame. But he could have. But like so like they would have been very much experienced in like seeing what can happen to the world and what can happen in your own country. And the grandma just looks at the girls and being like, you girls are very selfish in this regard for like the, well, what can I get and what can I get and everything like that. And it's like generational comparisons of stuff. Which is, happens in all types of cultures and everything like that. I pet the baby girl because she a good baby girl. Yes, you a good baby girl. And so Tycho is just sitting there like eating apples and listening to her mother and her sisters have this conversation where they are talking about the fact that when Tycho was a baby, she fell down the stairs. And and that may have caused some problems and everything like that. And it's just like, okay, sometimes people are just bad at math. Just get over it. Not everybody's good at every single subject. I admit that. I liked science, but I wasn't necessarily the best at it. Different things like that. And like the mom's like, well, if she was getting like a C or a B, I could tell her to just work harder, but this is different, and just all this other stuff. And they're just like she did fall down the stairs when she was a baby and everything like that. And Tycho's just like in the other, trying to stabbing her apple and trying to divide it into smaller bits with her fork, which is just kind of funny. And then we cut back to the present, 1982, and Tycho and Toshio are talking and everything like that on this ski lift. And he's like, well, you should come back during winter. And, all of us are like ski instructors here and everything like that in the winter. So you should come back then and you can ski and, spend some more time here and everything like that. And they're having this more, discussion here and everything like that of Toshio, talking about the fact of, him doing the organic farming is like, like returning to nature and stuff like that. And there's also a few other bits in this where we see Toshio, where we see Tycho go and help Toshio on like his farm. On like his organic farm and everything like that, where we see them working together and stuff like that. At some points in this movie where we see that and everything. And they show up and they, kind of look down on, part of the mountainside, looking down over like the whole farmland area. And Tycho goes, yeah, this is the countryside. And he's like, well, the thing here is that, and he gets a really good monologue here where he's just like, the thing is that everything you see here was a result of a farmer. And she's like, that river? He's like, there's a dam that we used, they had to dam to move the river and everything. And, that bridge was built, this road was built, those fields, those forests were planted for certain reasons and everything like that. And like, we get these like different shots as he's going through and like talking about the stuff. We get shots of like the landscape, but we also get shots of like the different farmers and stuff like that are like, highlighting this moment in the movie is like highlighting the fact that these farmers were the ones that, settled this land and started to set everything up here, where it's like, so these lands would be useful for growing food and raising livestock and different things like that, and growing other types of crops that they can use and everything, like the flowers and other stuff. And so we're seeing all of that, and that this has been done over like the course of generations and everything like that. And the same thing is very easily said here for the US and for other countries as well. It's like, yes, the cowboys and stuff like that were out, outlaws and Indians and everything like that way back, everything during the settling of the US. But the thing is that, farmers and cattle ranchers were also ones that were very, important in setting up that area. And like, most cities started off as just, farms growing up around each other, and then other buildings growing up because of the farms and everything like that, and just have grown and grown and grown and grown since then. But the thing is that if you don't have the farm areas in order to help support like the city areas and the town areas, growing the food and the livestock and everything like that, and growing other crops that are needed and stuff like that, like cotton and, sugar cane, which goes for food and everything like that, different things like that, then it's much harder for other parts of society to keep going. And so Toshio is kind of like pointing that out. and gets like a really good monologue about that. So we have like this other, really good moment there between the two of them and this whole thing happening. Um, and that there is this symbolic relationship that humans have with nature in this regard, and that there has to be this balance. And he's like, he kind of feels it like they're kind of losing that a bit over the time. So we like that and everything. And this is where they have them. Taiko goes and helps at his farm and everything like that. And then we have this moment where Taiko, Toshio, and Naoko are out walking around, kind of at sunset, and like we see these crows fly away, and Taiko points and goes, "Oh, look, the crows are flying home," and everything. And she explains that that had been like her line in like the class play when they did, whatever the name of the class play was. Um, and so we get this other little story where she's explaining that she, when she had been in the play, this was just the one line she had. And she had initially wanted to try to come up with like additional lines or other stuff that she could say. And the teacher is just like, "No, don't do that. This is what you're supposed to do. Just read the lines and do this." And what ends up happening is, so we cut back to the 1966 again, and Taiko is, relaying this memory to, Toshio and Naoko and everything, like telling them this. And she's like, well, she tried to come up with like how she could make the line better or something like that. And she eventually ended up being, when they're doing the whole play and everything like that on stage for, all of their families and everybody else, that, she does the line the right way and everything. But then like, she like does a little wave as like the birds are leaving, and, and then they head off stage and everything like that. So they do that. And then, later she explains that the most amazing thing happened. That a college student that is part of the drama club at the college or whatever had arrived at their house. How he got their address, I have no idea. Shows up at their house and talks to Taiko's mother, very respectfully, as is stated, that he would like to see about trying to have Taiko be part of the performance that they are going to be doing, and have her play like the child in the performance and everything. And the mom seems okay with it, and Taiko is very excited about it because she thinks it'll be very fun. And then, that night they're all talking at dinner and everything like that, and both of her sisters seem very happy about this and ecstatic and everything. Very happy for Taiko and everything, and like complimenting it. And we get this moment where like, the mom compliments Taiko about other stuff and everything. And like Taiko kind of has like this bit of a daydream where she's dreaming about getting to be like a star and be on magazines and being on, TV shows and different things like that, and like interacting with like, characters that she watches on like TV shows and stuff like that. I like just like big fantasy stuff and everything like that is adorable about getting to be like a child actress, which is just so cute. And the dad kind of is the one that shoots this down. He makes whatever or like one of the sisters made the comment, I think it was Naoko makes a comment, and that's something that the dad doesn't like, and the dad is just like, "Yeah, we're not going to have any actors in this family. This is not a show business family." And he is, this is like end of discussion, end of topic there. And Taiko kind of like talks to Naoko, and she's like, "You're the one that made that comment to dad, and that's why he said no. And like, you're the one that did that." And, Naoko ends up like calling her a pest and everything like that, which is like, you can have really good relationship with your siblings, and there are just other times where you just want to strangle them. Or you just want them to leave you alone. This is very true. And, so the college student comes back, and Taiko's mom has to explain that no, she's actually very shy and doesn't want to do this or wouldn't be very good at this and everything. And, he's like, "We'll make sure that she gets home safe. We'll take very good care of her," and all this other stuff, being very respectful and everything like that. And she's just like, "No, he's like, well, I thank you for your time anyway, very polite, and leaves. And, a different girl from their school ends up getting to go and be like the girl in the play for the high school and everything. And Taiko is like talking to her mother about that, and the mother is just like, I think he ends up picking Tsuneko instead, who is her friend and everything like that. And Taiko's mom is just like, you can't tell her that they asked you first. You can't. How do you think that would make her feel? And it's like, I can kind of see where that's coming from the mom's standpoint of like, she is your friend, and it's not, it's not nice of you to then go and be like, well, I was offered the part first before they gave it to you and everything like that. But it's like, this was something that Taiko would have been very proud of and everything like that. So it's like, I can kind of see it from both ways. Also, the friend, the Tsuneko, who's the one that got picked to do it, is also just kind of like very snooty as well. So I can understand a lot of that. For it's just like, I would have something I could lord over her and everything like that. So she's also a very rich girl, because she's like, oh, my daddy bought us a vacation house and we're going to go there, or whatever, stuff like that. And like on their way home, Taiko ends up like singing along to like the show theme song from like her the children's show that she watches and everything like that. And then we cut back to the present, and 1982, and Naoko and Toshio are like, they feel kind of sorry for Taiko for her not getting to have the role and try it and everything. And Taiko ends up like kind of like backstepping and be like, well, I wasn't gonna be famous. I am aware of this, but when I got into high school and college, I tried acting, and it was just kind of a one-off thing back when I was a kid, and it didn't go anywhere, but I at least wanted to try and everything. And they're just like, okay. And then Taiko and Toshio end up reminiscing about like their favorite show, their favorite character from when they were kids. And, going into the, song and everything like that. And there's like part of the song is like, if today is bad, tomorrow will be better. And if tomorrow is still bad, keep trying or keep going or whatever it was. So it's like a motivational thing or whatever. And like they're just talking and everything, and like going into the song, like like quoting it at each other. And then Naoko is just kind of off to the side looking at them going, what the heck is going on here? And everything, like, you guys are weird moments and everything. So we're having that moment. And then we have this it's like Taiko's last night before she's going to be going home, and she's, sitting in the house where she's been staying with the family she's been staying with, and they're like, I think she's working on trying to make like ice cream or something, because she's got like what looks like milk or something that she's like beating in a bowl that's got like ice in it and like flavorings around her and everything like that to like make the treat or whatever and everything. And Taiko is talking to the grandma of the family, and the grandma makes the comment of like, well, why don't you stay here? Why don't you just marry Toshio and you can stay here? And this very much flusters Taiko, and like the parents are there just like, maybe not. Like trying to talk the grandma down from that and everything like that. So there's this whole big conversation that gets happening, and like the grandma makes several good points, but so do the other two. And Taiko is very comfortable with this family and everything. And he was like, well, why don't you just marry Toshio and everything like that? And you guys, and you can stay here and you guys can be happy together and everything like that. And Taiko stays very silent during all of this. And then eventually, like, she just like runs off. And as she runs off, it begins to rain, and she's just like walking around in the rain. And she ends up seeing this, illusion of what was a kid that was in her class back in the 1960s, Abe, and he has this very very dirty appearance and bad manners and everything like that, that like he comes from like this very rural town, and like him is poor and everything like that, wearing very much hand-me-down clothes and everything like that. And she's like transported back in time to where she's talking with Abe, or talking with her classmates about Abe, and how they're just like, you should ask to be reassigned. He should have to sit next to a boy and everything like that. And, Abe, just like her remembering interacting with Abe and everything like that. And he's like, don't make me hit you and everything like that. And, very tough guy attitude and everything like that he gives off. And then she's, back to the present, and Toshio finds her in the rain, and he gets her into the car so she can, dry off and everything. And Taiko ends up saying, I just saw, this kid that I knew back in elementary school and everything. And like, if I was that, I'd be like, okay, as in like, you thought you saw them, or you somehow ran into him in this village in the middle of nowhere, type of thing. But like, she's explaining that, like, and as they drive, and like, again, this is in the 1980s, so Toshio has cigarettes that he's smoking and everything like that. And like, he's also just trying to make himself slightly more comfortable with this conversation, because it's a very odd conversation that's happening. And Taiko is, she's talking about Abe and how, when he, was having to leave, he, the teacher made everybody shake his hand, but he wouldn't shake Taiko's hand. And he just said, I'm not going to shake your hand and everything like that. And, Taiko thinks that it's because he didn't like her. And Toshio makes the comment of like, well, it could have been that he did like you because you were like the only one that actually didn't, that like maybe saw him for a real person or something like that. Like, didn't treat him with kid gloves or something like that. And, they get the comparison of like, well, when I was when I was a kid, I used to pick on the girls that I liked until they, snapped at me or whatever. Just like, don't do that. Don't be the boy that is just like, oh, I like this girl, I'm going to pull on her pigtails until she notices me. That's not a good way of getting girls to notice you. That's a good way of getting hit. Getting in trouble. So they have this whole, discussion, and Taiko remembers where she saw Abe and his father at one point. The father is a little bit, kind of dirty and everything too, and all of that. Not very well kept and everything. And, Abe kind of like spits at her and gives her like, the glare and everything like that. And then he gets kind of like a little bit like bonked on the head by his dad for his actions. And then, Taiko ends up kind of like mimicking him. And we cut back to where we have Taiko and Toshio sitting in the car and talking and everything. And she's saying that she actually liked Abe. She just, stuff like, different things like that. And having this whole conversation, and like Toshio has gone into these other explanations about different things where it's like, oh, well, for, his thoughts on farming and different things like that, and why he wanted to do this, and so many other stuff. And he does enjoy being, on the farm and everything like that. So we get a bunch of that. And he ends up asking what happened at the house. And she's like, don't ask about what happened at the house. It's fine. Just don't mention it or anything like that. And we cut to where it is. She's, she's imagining, she actually ends up imagining, like, would she want to be with Toshio? Would she want to stay and marry him and be with him and be like a farmer with him? And she like kind of imagining that. And then it just cuts back to them in the car, and it stops raining, and he takes her back to the house. And then it's, it's the next day, and, they're all sending Taiko off at the train station with smiles and everything like that. And Taiko gets on the train and is on her way back to Tokyo. And while she's on the train, these, the vestiges of like her classmates show up, along with her younger vestige show up. And, we see this moment where like she has this realization that she does want to be with Toshio. And, the train stops, and she gets off one train, and she gets back on the other train, and she gets to a payphone, and she calls the house where Toshio is. And, the grandma is very happy, and she runs out and tells Toshio, just go, blah, 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 get in your car, drive here, and find, find her. And, so Toshio does that. So he's driving, and we see, and like, Taiko is like, gets on the bus and is riding, with all of the other kids and everything like that. All of them around her being very happy and everything like that. and her younger self there as well, riding to meet Toshio, and they meet, and Toshio, does run over to her, and I don't think we ever see anything where they actually kiss, which is adorable. But they get back on the they get into Toshio's car, and I guess they're driving back to the town, to, I guess, start planning a wedding. I guess. But like, as they were heading back to the car, Taiko's, we have this where it's like the illusion of like all of her classmates have like made like the giant stick thing that looks like, the arrow, and have them like underneath the arrow, to show, like Taiko loves, Toshio type of a thing. And, when they get in the car and they head off, and then we just had, like the end credits, is, the last bit that we see is the younger version of Taiko, the fifth grade version, just watching as her older self is driving off. And Taiko, is just kind of like happy about that. And it's, and I don't know if it's this representation of like leaving your fifth grade self behind, but, I guess there's just some other bits that are shown in the credits that I don't remember, that just don't, as the credits are rolling is when all of this stuff is happening that shows Toshio and Taiko getting together and heading off. So that's what we have there. I don't think there's too much I need to say about the cast. As I mentioned earlier, this did not get dubbed until 2016. So there's not too much there. There's been only the original Japanese dub and then this English dub, where we have the younger Taiko is voiced by Allison Fernandez, and then Daisy Ridley voices the grown-up Taiko. Dev Patel, Daisy Ridley is, of course, Rey in, Star Wars movies and everything like that, Star Wars girl. Dev Patel plays Toshio. I believe he was I want to say he's the main character in Slumdog Millionaire, but I've also seen him in other stuff. And then there's just, a whole bunch of other ones that are just like, other voice actors and actresses and everything like that. But that's what I have here. I do like this one. My dad and I saw it together for the first time at like an art house screening here in Lincoln at one of our art house studios that is connected to the University of Nebraska, the Ross. And that was very nice and everything like that, because it was like one of the Studio Ghibli movies that hadn't been released here in the U.S. before. So that's what we have there. I believe the next one is Pompoko. I believe, about the transforming raccoons, the Tanukis. So I might pull up Chopper in the background when I do that one, because he is kind of a transforming Tanuki, because he looks like that. So that's what I have. I thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry this ended up being like an hour and a half long. Sorry, I had a lot to go over. But I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!